Hey there, Happy New Year and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld Anomaly Sea Ice Challenge with the transhumanist paragons of Pandroth. Last time we left off, after our small psycasting outpost here was shrouded in unnatural darkness emitted by 3 Noctoliths. While our 2 psycasters, Light and Elpis, were still resting and recovering from the wounds they suffered at the hands of a horde of sight stealers, the darkness then spat out several Noctols, insect-like creatures that thrive in the dark, and promptly began to dismantle our base. Elpis' sister Ellie, together with her husband Vulek, the children's former mentor Maniac, as well as our ghoul Jay. Together they successfully fended off the threat, and speaking of ghouls, one thing we didn't get to last episode was turning our Sanguophage prisoner here into one. Nightshade is in the last stages of her preparations though, having now removed every single organ as well as the prisoner's bionic leg. Meanwhile, at our small outpost, Maniac is throwing a party. Perhaps not ideal to do that next to a rotting Thrumbo, but our pawns being in a festive mood here is definitely understandable. Back home then, Nightshade performs the ghoul infusion and our Sanguophage prisoner is human no longer. His organs will all regrow, which is why we took them out in the first place. The only thing still missing is a new name. From now on, he will go by Brock, named after patron supporter Brock Heilman. Now, despite being turned into a ghoul, Brock's Sanguophage roots still persist, and so he will remain in a regeneration coma until all of his vital organs have regrown, plus a few days extra, I think. I believe that's how it works. In the background, you have perhaps also noticed unnatural healer Kojiro working on some chairs. The goal here is to get his construction skill up to level 6 so that we can turn him into a production specialist, which does in fact improve the quality of artworks as well, despite being tied to only construction and crafting. In the meantime, we're getting some transport pods ready, both at home and at our small outpost. For Vulek, Jay, and a few materials, most importantly the reinforced barrel we reclaimed from the mortar, it's time to return back home, where we are also already in the process of loading up a transport pod filled with supplies, mostly meals and blood for our 2 Sanguophage psycasters. The notice of another sight stealer being revealed then brought a quick flash of panic to my eyes. Thankfully though, it seems to be only a single one, perhaps mysteriously recovered from its wounds. Either way, no challenge for Maniac with a Persona monosword. Already stripped naked, we then await the arrival of prisoner Carlos's shuttle. In just a moment, our colony will be slightly richer by some jade and 4 units of Glitterworld medicine. Was that worth feeding, housing, and occasionally having our ghouls beat him half to death? I don't know, but I am glad he's gone now. And who knows what that Glitterworld medicine might eventually be good for. Maniac, meanwhile, is going to town on the defoliator ship that is still threatening our psycasting outpost. The mechs guarding it have long been destroyed by manhunting walks, sight stealers, and shamblers, and now the ship is gone too. Just a few seconds later, Kojiro then has reached construction level 6, and so it's time for a role change. Let's turn him into a production specialist to finally kickstart our arts department. Considering the size and wealth of our base, it's actually quite surprising that we have neglected this for so long, but thanks to Kojiro, that will now finally change. The role change then a success, what else could it be? Kojiro also does not lose access to any other skills that he's terribly good at, and so artwork and unnatural healings will be his forte. Our small psycasting outpost, meanwhile, receives a cooler, and with that, for the first time, the need for power. We'll solve that in just a second. First, we are informed that the Mind-Numb Serum research has been completed. We already have a few of those in storage from looting and quest rewards, and we'll continue down this line of research and unlock the Metal Blood Serum next. Our outpost's need for a power supply is then solved by the construction of a chem fuel generator. Certainly not the most efficient power source, but we will most likely not stay for that much longer anyway, and we also only need it if inside temperatures get too warm to cool our meals. The rotting Thrumbo has taught me a valuable lesson there. This also means that Maniac and Ellie can both return home now too, and just like that, our 2 psycasters, Light and Elpis, are all on their own again. Now, since we are about to unlock all the different serums available in the Anomaly DLC, it might be time to also construct a serum lab now. And just as we do, we find something new with the ground-penetrating scanner, a vein of uranium, a material that we will inevitably need to make the switch to armors like Recon, Marine or Cataphract, and the 1200 units here should more than suffice for the rest of the game. The lab is then quickly constructed, but unfortunately we don't get any time to test it out. Instead, we are attacked by two groups of Neanderthals, one of them curiously including Light's wife. Seems like our super psycaster has been busy since his stint with the Believers of Boyo, and this here is not the first time that we experience a raid that might be targeted at getting him back, so slightly over 100 melee-wielding Neanderthals are approaching. Time to unleash the Nociosphere. I have very few doubts that it should make quick work of the group of 55 down here. Especially against poorly armored melee enemies, it is generally a very efficient tool. And we don't even need to get involved just yet, as both enemy groups are still preparing, so we can simply sit back and watch the carnage unfold. As we prepare our defenses against the second group then, we are informed that the Nociosphere has completed its goal. Its onslaught will continue for about half a minute, time that I believe will be spent shooting at the remaining survivors, while group number 2 now finally begins marching towards us. And we welcome them with open arms and itchy trigger fingers. The Nociosphere meanwhile has finished its onslaught. Let's see if we can achieve equally impressive results. The big trouble with Neanderthals, of course, their strong melee damage and robust genes, so setting up our usual choke point strategy here to defeat them in melee combat is perhaps not the ideal approach. As you can see, stunning them with a flare also only works for a few brief seconds. In hindsight, I definitely should have included 1 or 2 grenadiers in this setup. At the end of the day, these are still only tribals and as such very poorly armored. Duking it out the hard way then also unfortunately results in Maniac going down, so overall this fight certainly could have gone better. Nonetheless, our ghouls and Scyther Gnome are holding the line and eventually sent the enemies packing. Maniac did unfortunately lose his right leg, but for a colony like ours, that is nothing that a quick bionic replacement can't fix. Our colony leader Elpis then suffering a hopefully not foreshadowing crisis of belief. His faith in the paragons of Pandroth has taken a big hit, and he's now going to spend some time hiding in his room, perhaps to think about his future. Back home on the sea ice, meanwhile, cleanup is well underway. Our lifter bots carry the dead Neanderthals into the water, while Ellie installs one of Kojiro's new void sculptures, as you can see, of excellent quality, all that with an art skill of only 8. Our other production specialist Lauren, meanwhile, has been busy too, making 2 power claws, as we are briefly interrupted by Light awakening from his psycasting coma, the effects of the neuroquake finally shaken off. Our sea ice base is then visited by an exotic goods trader. We can afford to sell off some shards as well as the 2 lungs we harvested from Brock. In exchange, we pick up a stone skin gland that will eventually also go onto the ghoul, who has already received the 2 power claws. My plan here is to equip the guy with basically everything that we can slap onto him. As a Sanguophage, he already receives a melee damage bonus, and with all of these body modifications, I think we can turn him into a ghoul the likes of which we have not yet seen before. The Hussar Shadow, meanwhile, who also joined us last episode, and who is mysteriously able to bring herself back from the dead, albeit only a limited number of times, she now goes into the gene extractor to hopefully acquire a few more useful Hussar genes, just as we are informed that Light and Elpis have once again meditated enough, and so it is now time to advance Elpis to psycasting rank number 5. Only one more, and the 2 of them will finally be able to return home. At home, we then use Kojiro's unnatural healing ability to remove another scar from Nightshade. It's a bit unfortunate that torso scars cannot be healed using bionics, but then again the ability cooldown is only 5 days, so who are we to complain? Elpis' Psylink number 5 is then successfully gained. Once again, we get to choose one of 3, and the choice is an easy one here. Back home we have side trainers for both Word of Inspiration and Fast Skip, so invisibility it is. At this point we should also take note of the fact that Light's wife did in fact die during the assault earlier, providing him with a -20 mood penalty for the next 28 days, so I guess we'll have to see how that turns out. From Shadow we then extract the Great Shooting Gene Pack, a gene pack that we do in fact already have, unfortunately though the exotic goods trader has already moved on. Then, together with the Royal Tribute Collector, 2 donkeys arrive and immediately decide to join us. I'm not quite sure what to make of this. Either way, we're not going to take them in. On the same note, however, the Royal Tribute Collector will also have to leave empty-handed. You may have noticed it already, I really don't want to interact with the whole Empire side of the Royalty DLC too much in this playthrough. At the beginning of the series, I actually briefly thought about going to war with the Empire, and we could still do that. It would certainly fit our Raider meme, but I also don't want to overload the series with too many goals simultaneously. Either way, for now our attention is taken by Roman, finally aging up and having his next growth moment. The child of Lauren and Maniac has gained new passions by, very fittingly, studying ore mining, coming after his father I see, and for his passions we will in fact follow in his parents' footsteps with melee mining and crafting. The nimble trait is also available for him, which I think would make him an excellent melee fighter. Not to mention that his xenotype, the Viscalaire, also comes with a melee damage bonus, and by the way also makes him deathless. Not the worst credentials I think, to soon have him standing on the front lines. To that end we will now also equip Roman with that Masterwork Plasteel Spear, a weapon that was actually made by Kralith in the last series. Let's hope that it serves our blue-skinned child well. What follows is then what should be a rather lengthy process. With the High Mech Tech project now unlocked, we can make our very own Diabolus. As you can see, it's not only going to be lengthy but also costly, but against enemies like the ones we just faced, weakly armored but large in numbers, it might be a very potent weapon. Then, all of a sudden, yet hardly surprising, Light suffers a mental break, and in some ways this one could not be more fitting. Still processing the loss of his wife, Light has simply given up. He has decided to leave the colony for good, leaving Elpis behind. And honestly, as unfortunate and unexpected as this might be, I feel like it does make for the perfect end to Light's story arc in this series. Forcefully abducted in a psychic ritual and made to join our ranks, taking a young psycasting prodigy under his wings and taking him onto a journey of finding true power, and now, with little else left to teach him, leaving Elpis behind to unlock the last secrets all by himself, without the guidance of his mentor. So while Light makes his exodus, we quickly need to accept this bandit encampment quest. Once again, we're doing so for the Glitter World medicine, and no, we are not going to attack them just yet. The bandit camp will remain for 19 days, plenty of time to gestate that Diabolus and for Elpis to hopefully make his way back to us safely. Light, meanwhile, leaves the map, and with that, this playthrough. Honestly, his cameo in this series might be one of my favorite Rimworld moments ever, and again, I think his exit here is just incredibly fitting. It is unfortunately also soon followed by yet another raid. Looks like tribespeople have it out for us today. What looks like a small group here is actually a tightly packed cluster of 172 enemies. And, well, you know the drill. Time to unleash the Nociosphere once again. Okay, so looks like with the game having some trouble separating all enemies onto their individual tiles quickly enough, the Nociosphere is capable of taking them all down immediately, or at least enough of them to send the rest packing. Granted, the downed enemies here are only in pain shock, but after getting back up from that, their fate is not much better. And, well, this actually presents a bit of a problem for us. After all, the Nociosphere is still in its onslaught mode and will remain that way for about 50 more seconds. Problem is, for the most part, we've ran out of enemies for it to kill. However, since it does not differentiate between friend or foe in this mode, it will come for us next, and if we leave it to it, it could skip right inside of our base, bypassing all walls and doors. So in order to prevent that from happening, we have a small team leave the base to meet it outside, and a crucial part of that team are Ellie and Maniac, both equipped with the stun psycast. The Nociosphere only has a regular psychic sensitivity, so the duration of that psycast is unfortunately not extended. Still, each cast will stun it for 3 seconds, and we also have enough mobility here to evade its more powerful attacks in the meantime. And so, just as the Nociosphere prepares to fire off one last devastating blast at our ghoul Kelly, and actually also succeeds in doing so, we succeed in keeping it stunned for long enough to not deal any permanent damage to anyone. Once more, the Nociosphere has returned to its holding cell, and our ghouls will quickly recover. Any excess wealth gained from this raid is also about to go up in flames. Ellie swiftly manages to secure the deep drill here, which we had constructed earlier to mine for some more plasteel. Ellie is then also the target of another small bionification project as the night sets across the sea ice. Last episode's Noctol attack has caused her to lose her left ring finger, so of course the only logical solution is to replace the entire arm. Just as Maniac decides against putting out the last flames, we are then informed of a cold snap, thankfully though only affecting our psycasting refuge, where it is already quite a bit warmer than on the sea ice. On the following morning, after dropping her last bits of clothing to avoid them becoming tainted again, we sent Shadow into the subcore rip scanner once more, a procedure that will, for the 3rd straight time, kill her, but she also still has 2 death refusal charges left. And so we gain another high subcore and Shadow returns to us mere moments later. At this point, she only has 1 charge left, and the question very much becomes whether or not we should use that. At the moment, I really like it as a safety net should she ever go down in combat, but let's not forget that she also was one of those mysterious creep joiners, so she has a dark secret that she has not yet revealed to us, and potentially leaving her with the ability to self-resurrect could make her even more dangerous. Now the next few hours are spent with the construction of a small laboratory, a place to make medicine, drugs, serums and other bioferrite stuff, lit up in a nice green color, and a few hours later including everything we need. After all, we've been growing psychoid leaves for quite some time now, so I'd say it's about time we finally do something with them. Our next anomaly research project then, no surprise, we are going for the Juggernaut serum next, while Lauren, with both her intellectual and her crafting skills sitting at 20, makes for the perfect person to cook up some drugs. Yayo for now, but we might go even further and turn that into go juice. For now, our colonists actually have little to no experience using the stuff. As a Hussar xenotype, Shadow has a dependency, but that hardly counts, I think. Nonetheless, as a somewhat artificial way to enhance one's abilities, it does make some sense for a transhumanist colony. At the very least, it turns the leaves into something usable and tradable. We are also going to make the new laboratory look extra nice with specially crafted hex tiles, and while we do, we are reminded that as a result of only joining us last episode, Shadow has of course not yet been converted to the Paragons of Pandroth. Luckily, the conversion ritual has just come off of its cooldown. As you can see, the ritual quality won't be fantastic, still we have a roughly 70% chance of getting a good outcome, so let's find out whether or not Shadow can be convinced. Just as a group of travelers then visits our psycasting outpost, the ritual concludes, and it is a masterful one. I had honestly not expected that, but the previous one was masterful too, if I recall correctly. Either way, that is Shadow now instantly converted, and we have also gained enough ideology development points to once again reform the Paragons of Pandroth. And on this topic, I would like to hear your opinion. What do you think we should pick as the 4th and final meme of this ideology? Following along with my previous arguments in favor of drug use, we might want to go with High Life. At the moment, I don't really see anything else that sticks out to me. The precepts from Ritualist we have already mostly integrated, and the new Inhuman meme was not overly popular the last time I asked this question. So let me know in the comments down below what you think should be next on the list. And so, with our colony wealth having officially surpassed 300,000 silver, and that is just for this colony, our psycasting outpost does of course also have a value, I think we are fast approaching what could very well be the final chapters of this series. So again, let me know how you think we should proceed for those last few episodes. Is there anything you would really like to see in this series that we have not yet covered? Let me know in the comments, and of course, if you enjoyed the video, then I would also be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can also subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.